What I witnessed in Gaza firsthand is a genocide. It is a systematic, planned, to detail genocide, forced displacement of the population, implementation and widespread disease, starvation to the point of far-reaching famine, infanticide, directly, specifically killing children, lack of baby formula or targeting them with munitions, theriocide, killing of animals and the spreading of disease of rabies amongst the animal population to spread it to the human population. They are enacting a genocide in every imaginable way, and it is by design. It is being implemented by design, and the United States is complicit. This is a genocide, and we have to call it that.
All right, joining us now is retired Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar. He's a whistleblower in Gaza. He worked at the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and reported on some of the atrocities that he saw there. And he joins us now. Lieutenant Colonel, good to see you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me, and it's an honor to be here. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. And Anthony was also a U.S. Army Green Beret. Anthony, tell us, what did you see when you went to go work there in Gaza?
So what I witnessed in Gaza firsthand is a genocide. It is a systematic, planned, to detail genocide, forced displacement of the population, implementation and widespread disease, starvation to the point of far-reaching famine, infanticide, directly, specifically killing children, lack of baby formula or targeting them with munitions, theriocide, killing of animals and the spreading of disease of rabies amongst the animal population to spread it to the human population. They are enacting a genocide in every imaginable way, and it is by design. It is being implemented by design, and the United States is complicit. And I witnessed this firsthand in GHF, or Gaza Humanitarian Foundation distribution sites, which are closed now, where unarmed, starving Palestinians were drawn to these sites with the promise of food, who, while they were there, their homes were bombed and they would never go home if they survived. And the United States not only championed this effort, but promoted this effort, and through the Boston Consulting Group was part of this design in this effort. This is a genocide by definition and in execution, and we have to call it that.
Yeah. So you go there, I assume originally thought, oh, we're going to feed these folks, and I don't know if you knew back then that they were starving. And when you got there, you talked about big picture just now. But give me a sense of what you saw your first day there, and when did you begin to realize, wait, this is not what we were told?
So when I first got recruited by UG Solutions, which is a subcontract to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, specifically for the armed security of food going in, I knew that within Gaza that the population was starving. The United Nations, UNRWA, or the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for the Palestinian refugees, had been banned from going in. So regardless of the why or what behind that, which we now know was debunked, and that the why that they couldn't go in is non-substantiated, that they were quote unquote providing it to Hamas, that's been discredited by not only Israel, but the United Nations, in that people were starving. That was a fact. And I felt that the United States going in to provide a joint effort with Israel and the United States, that it was being done in good faith, in line with humanitarian principles. Humanitarian aid and humanitarian assistance is not something that should be left to amateurs. It should be done independently. It should be done neutrally. It should be done impartially, and it should address the humanitarian need. Within my first day, the 24th of May, going into Gaza with the Israeli occupation forces to go to these sites to do an initial plan on how distribution would go, I immediately recognized that the sites themselves had been identified and built in engagement areas of active combat. Some may say, well, all of Gaza is a war zone. Take that as it may. There were areas where there were specific offensive combat operations, and these were those sites were built. That is a violation of the Geneva Convention, black and white. Noticing that and first bringing that up to the leadership, GHF, and representatives from COGAT, or the Coordinating Office of the Governance of the Territories, which is under the Ministry of Defense within Israel. Therefore, it became clear to me that there was a for-profit contract behind doing this. So that takes away impartiality, neutrality, and addressing the humanitarian need. On the very first day of distribution, the 27th of May, or excuse me, the 26th of May at distribution site number 1 in Rafah, 35 to 40,000 starving Palestinians rushed to the site, and we only had enough food for maybe 8,000. And as they came and rushed into the site, we were providing them with no water whatsoever. This is obviously concern to a starving population when, in addition to not providing water, you're only providing them with partial food items, dried goods that require water to cook, and we were providing no water. After that first day, thankful that I survived. And for anyone who thinks that the Palestinians that are seeking food have ill intent or want to kill us or are Hamas, on that day, with close to 40,000 people rushing onto a site with only about 24 Americans, they could have killed us all. They could have kidnapped and killed us all. And they didn't. They were there for food. And we didn't give it to them. And we didn't give them water. And when I brought this up to the leadership again, this is an issue. Water is not in the contract. Therefore, we will not provide it. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation example of providing aid is a disaster. However, more so than it being a disaster, it was designed that way. Every day, starving Palestinians coming to these distribution sites, again, that no longer exist, scammering for meager amounts of food, crowding and rushing, being shot at by machine gun fire, controlled in their movement along corridors with artillery fire and tank fire. This is how the Israeli forces controlled movement of the population with machine guns, mortars, and tanks. Thousands died.
Yeah. So at least 2,600 people died just trying to get food at these centers through the great work of Lieutenant Colonel Aguilar and others, but you've been an enormous part of it, brother. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is now gone. They scattered after the kind of peace deal, and they were apparently having financial issues, etc. And so, but Anthony, one of the things I was curious about is you talked about how folks were getting killed in those places, including some of the kids and some heartbreaking stories. Tell us about one of those, but then afterwards, who's doing the killing? Is it the GHF guys, the Israelis, and how did they interact?
So to answer your first, actually, I'll answer the last one and go towards then finish off with this young story, the story of the young boy Amir. So the IDF and the UG Solutions American contractors who would work these sites worked hand in hand. Furthermore, the operations themselves, the distribution, the amount of food, the routes we would take, the times we would deliver, where we would deliver, how we would deliver, how long we would deliver, was all dictated by Israeli forces through this organization called COGAT. So whenever you hear about doctors and specialists and the UN wanting to go into Gaza or being blocked from Gaza, that's through COGAT. COGAT is that agent that does that. It's a specific office within Israel established to do that. So they work hand in hand, the IDF and the UG Solutions contractors, every day to coordinate. And it was more so than just a coordinating relationship. It was what I would call an adjacent unit relationship. So like in the military, if I'm in an infantry battalion operating in an area, there may be another battalion from another unit that's operating, doing a different mission, but we coordinate and we work adjacent to achieve the same mission. The UG Solutions, the armed contractors, were nothing more than an enveloped paramilitary force within the IDF to conduct military operations, not offensive operations, but security operations in the rear to forcefully displace and then control the population. Have no doubt about it. the United States is involved in military operations and they're doing it through a private contract, just like the days of Blackwater and Triple Canopy, it is no different. And going to the sites every day, who was doing the shooting? The vast majority of the amount of shooting came from Israeli forces. Every distribution site 1, 2, and 3 in the south in Rafah, and site 4, which was closed down even earlier, shut down weeks ago when operations were going into Gaza City, that site was shut down. But at each of these sites, there is an adjacent IDF unit located, a combat unit conducting combat operations, clearing operations through those areas. In the north, at the Netzarim, where there was active clearing operations in that area specifically, there was also a Markava tank company. So you had tanks that were there. Tanks also operating in the south. And I've got videos and pictures of this. I witnessed it. So hand in hand with the operations, unilateral, coordinated, adjacent unit operations, if you were to put this into military parlance. Now, the shooting itself, much of which by the IDF in and around these areas, specifically during the entrance, the large thousands of Palestinians coming to the sites, and as they egressed or as they left the sites, their movement would be controlled by machine gun fire. The IDF would say, oh, we were shooting over their heads. In this area with the terrain and the rubble and the berms and the destruction, you may think you're shooting over someone's head, when in reality, you're just shooting into the crowd right next to it. There is no shooting over someone's head and when there's a population of thousands. That's like going into Coachella with a machine gun and saying you were shooting over their heads. You're going to hit somebody. So the UG Solutions contractors armed Americans on tourist visas, most of which were part of the Infidels Motorcycle Club, operating at these sites, also fired at civilians. This is documented. On an occasion, a stun grenade was thrown into a crowd that killed a woman because it was used improperly, or a UG Solutions contractor firing their machine gun into a crowd, or their individually assigned rifle, their carbine on fully automatic into a crowd, expending an entire magazine, killing a man and wounding others. And this would happen daily. The use of tear gas, stun grenades, non-lethal rubber bullets, lethal live ammunition from machine guns and rifles into the crowd or at the crowd by every day on these sites. It was not a one-time, it was not a one-off, it was every day. And it escalated more and more to where, as the contractors became accustomed to operating without any rules and with no accountability, it got worse. So when you give someone who calls themselves an infidel, who are part of an organization whose charter is to fight jihad and the elimination of all Muslims, and you give them a rifle and send them into the Holy Land, what do you think they're going to do when they're faced with an Arab Muslim?
Yeah, so before we get to one of many heartbreaking stories you have about the child you're going to tell us about. So what I'm hearing from you is they were kind of using it as to herd people and crowd control. Like, so instead of putting up cones, they were firing bullets. So like, hey, if you're on the wrong side of the cone, you're dead. It almost feels like some sort of sick version of Squid Games, right? But in real life. And So did you interact with the Infidel Motorcycle Club guys at all? And
every day.
Yeah, whether it's those guys or the IDF, did anyone seem to show a conscience, or were they like, oh yeah, we murdered a bunch of kids today, and well, that's because they were on the wrong side of the cones, or by the way, there really aren't any cones, so they can't tell. That's a whole nother thing. So yeah. What was that interaction like?
Well, so there was a spectrum. I was not the first to resign. There were others under UG Solutions and Safe Reach Solutions, which were the two companies under the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation in Israel conducting operations in Gaza. Others resigned before me for the same reasons. Others resigned after me for the same reasons. There were some that it did weigh on their conscience, and they disassociated. They compartmentalized and put it in the back of their head. For some of these contractors, contracting is their sole source of income. It's what they do as a profession. So you had this, but then you had the range of folks that were there. So members of the Infidels Motorcycle Club who were there, they were recruited with the advertisement, so to speak, the bumper sticker of come to the Holy Land. This is a pilgrimage. This is a crusade. The Infidels Motorcycle Club adorned their bodies with tattoos of the Crusader cross and 1095. And for any historians out there, 1095 is the date of the first crusade when Pope Urban declared that Muslims should be wiped away from the earth and they are vermin and scum. That's what they stand for. That's what they proselytize. They see this as a pilgrimage, as a crusade, and they were there for that reason. You then had members of the IDF. You have members of the IDF, fighting soldiers in the IDF that are citizens of the United States that go over there and join the IDF to fight for the IDF, who have the vision of, I'm returning to the Holy Land, I'm returning to the motherland to fight the enemy, an unarmed enemy, women and children, killing them with bombs. The IDF don't have the courage and the warfighting capability to go in and clear, so they bomb everything. Anybody can bomb a neighborhood. It doesn't take skill and talent to drop a bomb on a neighborhood. Oh, by the way, when that bomb you're dropping was given to you by another country. Doesn't take a great nation to do that.
Yeah, it takes a different kind of nation to do that, that unfortunately has become heartless at this point. So some of them might be doing it for, hateful reasons, etc. Israel's doing it. It appears to terrorize the Palestinians so they leave Gaza or leave certain areas. And by the way, unfortunately, it worked in the sense that Israel now has 53% of Gaza, and it doesn't look like they're ever going to give it up. And so this was never about self-defense, and they proved it by taking half of Gaza for themselves. And now they're talking about building Israeli condos on Palestinian children's graves. And so it's deeply sickening. But tell me about Amir. So because I want people to understand that these are real human beings that are being slaughtered.
Real human beings, wonderful human beings who have conscience and who have heart and have dreams and have families, just like us. Every day that I wake up, from driving my kids to school or making my children breakfast or having coffee with my wife, I yearn and I'm in pain for the people of Gaza, the Palestinians, not only in Gaza, but in the West Bank. On the 28th of May, 2 days after we began initial operations, it was our second or third actual distribution operation. And this was at distribution site number 3, which was in southern Khan Yunis. On the site that day, much like with the previous 2 experiences, the Palestinians that get to the site at the end of the rush, when all the food is gone, are women and children typically. Small children, young children. And this young boy named Amir, he had no shoes, tattered clothes, very emaciated. Fingernails you could see were drying and rotten and cracking away because of no protein in his diet, no keratin produced in his body. He was dying. He's dying of starvation. And this young boy, I learned later when I spoke to his mother after his death, that he lived in Khan Yunis in the city, which is a little bit north central, if you will. And his neighborhood was bombed. His father was killed in that airstrike. He was separated from his mother in the evacuation. He was moved to the southern UN encampment in Khan Yunis, which is no longer there. That's been bombed and destroyed and bulldozed. His mother was sent to the Mawasi camp. They were separated. A family took him in. He came to the site that day getting food with his uncle. He and his uncle were separated because of the IDF firing machine gun fire on their way in the morning. He was alone. He had no family, no adult, no elder. This boy was maybe between 8 to 10. Hard to tell with the level of, malnutrition. Young boy, beautiful brown eyes, beautiful smile, and he's picking up meager scraps from the ground. Some rice, a little bit of some pasta noodles in a bag, and he's holding them in his hands. This boy doesn't have the ability to cook any of it. That's not a meal. It's nothing for him other than gratitude. And he came up to myself and another contractor who was standing there with me. 2 of us were standing together. And as he approached us, he reached out. The contractor standing next to me, he kisses his hand and holds it to his forehead. And I was told by one of the Palestinians that spoke English that was a sign of respect. He then, as I reached out my hand to him, he kissed my hand. He thanked us. And as he left and looked at us as he walked away, and I walked up with him towards the crowd, and he's kind of talking with me in Arabic, but kind of, just thank you, shukran, shukran. And so thankful. And yet his journey home, where he's got no parents and no family, with no shoes, walking through landmines and destruction and rubble, he said, thank you. And as he left that site, like many before him, and over 2,000 others that died in the same way, he was gunned down by the Israeli occupation forces in their position at the intersection of the exit of Site 3 and the Marag corridor. Gunned down and left for dead, bulldozed and buried, like thousands of others. A young boy who came to get food, who was starving. He's not Hamas. He has no ill intent. A young boy, lost and alone in this world, who still had the heart to say thank you. That's who we're killing. That's who we're bombing. That's who we are destroying the lives of. This is not a war. I've seen war. This is a genocide, and Israel will not stop until every Palestinian is dead or gone.
Or they've taken all the land. They don't allow any reporters in to see their war crimes. It makes sense. If you were committing a genocide, you wouldn't want any reporters documenting either. So that's why we're getting stories from rare people who are inside of Gaza, like yourself, that are Americans that can tell us what's actually happening. You're an eyewitness to a genocide. It's a very rare thing. So in the case of Amir, real quick, did you ever find out why they killed him? What, had he stepped outside of a line or that he didn't know about, or any reason why?
It was very clear to me on that day how it happened. And in fact, from what I saw that day on the 28th is what drove me then on that day. I went back to our main operation site. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, was just distraught. And so I wrote, I think it was about an 11-page document outlining all of the inconsistencies and the problems and the gaps and why this would keep happening if we didn't correct it, specifically for Site 3 because of where it was located on the corridor. What happened was the IDF soldiers used machine guns, coaxial machine guns from their Merkava tanks to fire at the crowds, at their feet, into the crowd over the head. There's plenty of video of this. In my BBC interview, that interview opens up with a crowd of Palestinians hunked in the ground as bullets fly into them and fly over their head and hit the dirt around them. I filmed that. That's for me. That's real. And as the IDF were shooting into the crowd, as you leave Site 3, there's an intersection. Along Site 3 was a berm that kind of blocks the view of the IDF on the east side of this location. And they opened fire shooting at the crowd. As the crowd that was on the site was leaving, UG Solutions contractors began pepper spray, stun grenades on children, women and children, getting them to leave the site. So there's chaos and they're running, and the IDF are already shooting. And this group runs into this hail of gunfire, this wall of bullets, 7.62 caliber machine gun bullets. And some were hit and went down and crawled. Some were shot and their bodies were dragged away. Some were shot and dropped to the ground. And if there wasn't somebody with them that knew that they had been killed, they were left there to be bulldozed over afterwards, or their bodies picked up and thrown in trucks and taken to Nasser Hospital, where the surgeons in Nasser Hospital, Americans, Dr. Aziz, an American who lives in Dearborn, Michigan, who I've talked to, has said that the bullet wounds were from IDF machine guns. So when you look at that and you see what's happened, it's intentional. It is intentional. It is a violation of the Geneva Convention, intentional or not, to target and shoot at an unarmed population. And there is not one of these people that was armed. It is a war crime.
Yeah, a recent study showed that 60% of the kids that the doctors looked at had intentional shots, sniper shots, chest or head. 60% of the children killed in Gaza, according to that study, sniper shots meant to murder them. I mean, if that's not terrorism, then the word terrorism doesn't mean anything. So it's unreal. I want to ask you last couple of specific questions here. So did the IDF use razor wire, which is banned under the Geneva Conventions, in dealing with folks here?
Yeah, so that was one of my initial concerns on the 24th of May during this reconnaissance, if you will. When we got up to the site, I was like, whoa, timeout. We can't, one, we can't distribute from these sites because of where they're located. Two, we cannot control movement, obstacles, if you will, with razor wire. And the UG Solutions guys, the other guys that were there, supposedly they have military experience. We're like, oh, there's no difference in that and this. And I'm like, there is. There is barbed wire, concertina wire, and there is razor wire. This is razor wire. Razor wire is specifically banned by the Geneva Conventions and the Fourth Protocol, of which Israel is a signatory to. We are a signatory to. You cannot use razor wire to control the movement of a civilian population to and from humanitarian assistance sites. You cannot. It doesn't say maybe. It doesn't say with an exception. It doesn't say if, your president gave you permission to do so. You cannot. We cannot do this. And then you look at weeks later when Bert and Ernie, that's who I call Witkoff and Ambassador Huckabee, went to go visit inside of site number 1, and GHF took this picture of the site. Look how great we're doing. And they took a picture of Palestinians lined up behind razor wire. They document their own war crimes. It's a war crime. They did it, and it's evil.
And they're thinking, yeah, I know kids and innocent civilians can get caught up in the razor wire and it's gonna, slice and dice them. But they probably were thinking, Anthony, don't worry, later we're gonna shoot them anyway. So this is the least of the things you're about to see.
It's like when we make sure that the needles we use when we put someone through lethal injection, that the needles are sterile. Don't worry about the needle being sterile. Death is coming. So yeah, I was like, at first when I was like, this is a big deal. That's why it became clear to me that the use of razor wire, the use of the canalization and the funnelization of human beings into a very small site using razor wire and then shooting at them, not giving enough food. And when they displaced from their home to come and get food, while they're there, their neighborhood's getting bombed. It was all by design. None of what's happening in Israel, in Gaza by Israel, is incompetence or inability. It is designed. It is by plan. It is a final solution that was designed in the beginning that is now playing out right under our nose and right in front of our eyes.
So speaking of which, I studied the Srebrenica genocide, which now seems quaint compared to this one, 6,000 killed. But the tactics were hauntingly similar. So in that case, there's convictions and there's no question about it. What they realized into their siege of the Serbs sieging the Muslim population there is that, hey, if we starve them, they'll have to come out for food. And when they come out for food that we're providing them, it'll be easier to kill them. So that's called bait and kill. Do you think that's what Israel was partially doing here?
Absolutely. And unfortunately, we in the United States take from their playbook and they take from ours. It's reminiscent of the Indian Removal Act of the 18 and 1900s. It's reminiscent of the treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek in the United States, where we destroyed all of their homes and their villages, and it got cold and we said, here's some blankets. I mean, it's horrible. It's what's really evil about this is that we have examples in our recent history, one generation removed. When I was up in DC this week, just got home back to North Carolina, I went to the Holocaust Museum, and as I left, on the Western Wall, there's a giant engraving in the wall, and it says, never forget what you've seen. Well, last time I checked, genocide and Holocaust don't belong to one specific group. What's happening is a genocide. This is a modern day Holocaust, and I will not forget what I have seen. And neither will the world. And it's time to wake up. They are taking out of our playbook, and we are learning from their playbook. And you know what we're learning from the Israelis? We're learning what to do in Portland, Oregon. We're learning what to do in Chicago, Illinois. We're learning what to do in Washington, D.C. And it's coming to a neighborhood near you. Mark my words.
So I am worried about that, and there's specific evidence behind that, and I'll get to that in 1 second. I do want to give the other side here. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation says that your claims are, quote, categorically false, that you're, quote, a disgruntled former contractor who was terminated for misconduct, And the IDF says, "Oh, don't worry. The things that he's reported are under review." So, how do you respond to the GHF and to the IDF?
Well, first of all, let's see. Where's the GHF now? If what they were doing was so humanitarian, why did the guy in charge, Jake Wood, step down on the very first day of operations? Because the guy in charge said this would not meet humanitarian principles. 3 days ago, Johnny Moore, the Christian Zionist evangelical that took his place, stepped down in hiding, scurried away like a cockroach where the fridge was moved from behind the wall, ran away. Now taking a job as the vice dean at Pepperdine. Nothing to see here. I'm still here. Here I stand, on my word and on my honor. And not one thing has been debunked. I resigned. Was I disgruntled? Yeah, I was disgruntled. Genocide disgruntles me. Watching women and children get murdered disgruntles me. Watching war crimes play out, half done by America, disgruntles me. Was I disgruntled? Absolutely, I was disgruntled. I resigned. In writing, there's proof. They did not terminate me. And in fact, they begged me to come back. On the last day that I left, where I said, this is enough, and I went, they offered to pay for my airfare home. They even gave me a letter, which I have shared with everybody on different platforms, asking me to reconsider working for them in another capacity. They wanted me to stay and work for them. The reason they now flipped the script is because they lost control. They don't control me. And I have all the photos, and I have all the videos, and I have all the witness testimony. And as much as they want to say that there was never shooting at our sites, that's categorically false. It's on video. Yeah. There's video of it. And in fact, the video that I filmed of a UG Solutions contractor shooting from the site into a crowd of civilians, UG Solutions played that video themselves on their website saying, look, here's the whole video if you want to know the whole story. Are you kidding? Again, they tell on themselves. I've always said, my grandma always told me, never interrupt an idiot when they're making a mistake. So I just let them talk.
Okay, by the way, we're very happy to have representatives of GHF and their leadership come on the show and answer questions. We'd love that. Lieutenant Colonel Aguilar is doing that. We'd be thrilled to have them on and be able to have a similar conversation. Okay, so and the IDF says that all of your complaints are under review. Have they gotten back to you yet? Are they busy working around the clock on that review?
I have filed inquiries to these reviews. In fact, on another platform on Breaking Points, both of the interviewers asked Chapin Fay directly, provide us this information. Nothing. Crickets. Of course. I have never seen a criminal go into court and oh yeah, did it. Got me. So the thing there, what is happening now, and I said this all the way back in July when I first talked to Senator Van Hollen and Senator Welch and Senator Saunders, I said, Israel will lose control of the crime scene. This has to end someday. And when it does, the world will see, and you will see what is happening, the genocide, the thousands that are buried in the rubble, the thousands that are dying of starvation where it's too late to give them food because they're already on their deathbed. It will be too late. Yeah. Now the world is seeing it. The gates have opened. We're going in. Oh my God, what is this? What have we let happen? And day by day, we're going to see more. Why do you think after the first 24 hours of going in, when the UN was allowed back in and the UN was saying, oh my God, Israel was like, nobody else can go in. We got control again. There's not a ceasefire. I knew that ceasefire would fall apart before the milk in my fridge expired, and it did. In fact, my milk lasted longer.
Yeah, well, of course, it's Benjamin Netanyahu. He said as he was doing the deal, he went back home and said in Hebrew, not in English, that the campaign will continue. So he never meant it, and of course, in the first couple of days, I forget if it was 3 or 4 day window, they killed 97 Palestinians. The mainstream media is still lying. There's 2 IDF soldiers who died. They're pretending Hamas did it. It's already been proven that that's not true. It was one of their own unexploded ordinances as they were destroying yet another home. They ran over it and died. And so the way the mainstream media has lied on behalf of Israel is maddening. Okay, last thing is about how it might come here. And so people might think, well, like, that sounds hyperbolic. I get what that they're doing there is just awful, et cetera. But you can't do that to Americans. But there's companies and individuals that are bragging. I mean, Larry Ellison has now an infamous quote where he says, we can now monitor all of the citizens and make sure that they behave. And so they've been using some of this technology in Gaza to monitor and track all the citizens. And one haunting example is, again, reported by the Israeli press. Israeli press pretty good, like way better than the American press. American press suppresses news. Some good outlets in Israel actually deliver news. Anyway, there's a program called Where's Danny, where an AI program picks someone that they think might be connected to another suspect, but they don't kill him immediately. They wait for him to go home, and then they bomb the home to make sure that they kill his family and his children along with him. Okay, and the sick people that are running that call that program Where's Daddy? So with all of this tracking that they've begun to perfect in Gaza, how worried are you that they're going to bring that home here?
Cenk, it's already here. It's already here. Next time you see on the news about Portland, look at the portable stanchion cameras that ICE is using in Portland to monitor these protests or these demonstrations. Those cameras, those are new. Those are newly developed. A joint venture between Palantir and Orbis and other new technologies growing. Those cameras, you know where we tested those? We tested those in Gaza at the distribution sites. Went up beta mode for biometrics and facial recognition and data collection. And now what are they using them? They're using them here. Tested there, used here. The tyranny and the oppression that we export will come back, and it's already here. The streets of Portland. Where does ICE train? The elite units within ICE and the DEA train with the Israeli Gendarmerie, their internal police force, part of the Israeli Defense Force, but their civil defense force, trains with them. That's a fact. You can look that up. The Illinois National Guard. What's in Illinois? Chicago. The Illinois National Guard trains with the Israeli Defense Forces. They are a sister unit as part of the Wales Initiative Fund global partnership. They train there, they train with them. Where do we want to take this next? Chicago. It's not a coincidence, people. Connect the dots. Next time you're in Washington, D.C., go to the corner of down in the Capitol across from the Longworth building and look. You'll see them all over the place. This one in particular. There's a little mobile stand, little generator with a stand, lights, and there's a camera on it. That's a new designed camera. That is an AI biometric enrollment device camera. You walk by, it's collecting your data. Guaranteed. I've seen it. They're using it. It's already here. They're already using it against us. And what do you think they're going to do with it? They're going to try to make the public library system better? No, they're going to oppress us, and it's coming.
Yeah, that extreme crowd control perfected in Gaza, now coming to a street near you. By the way, I thought it was super weird that Pete Hegseth wrote in his book that there should be IDF soldiers here in America. And now you're explaining they're already here and training with some of our National Guard. And that is enormously strange for the defense secretary to have talked about bringing IDF soldiers to America. And then all of a sudden he becomes defense secretary and then here they are. I don't know, it's haunting and it's strange. A lot of things you said today, unfortunately, are haunting, but like the line about how a genocide disgruntles me. But I want to thank you, brother, for having moral courage, for knowing what it means to be an American and what our principles and our Constitution and our ideas stand for, and having the courage to dissent and to say, no, I object. I object to a genocide. I object to America doing this. I can't thank you enough for it.
I thank you for your voice and for your courage and for Anna and for your platform. You are modern day heroes in fighting against the massive legacy media, which is coming down, by the way. It doesn't matter how much money they pump into it. Americans aren't stupid. We're starting to see through it. Platforms like yours, are what will save America. So thank you for your courage and for your voice. It's always an honor to talk with you.
Thank you, brother. It's nothing compared to what you've done. I appreciate you so much. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar, American hero. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So amazing, fascinating interview. I wish he hadn't seen those things, but thank God there's at least an eyewitness to it. All right, we're gonna go to the members only bonus episode now. I'm gonna tell you an ironic story about my childhood and guns and knives. A fun little story. All right, so our members sustain us. If you can, be a member and you get a little extra story time along with it and all of our content. So hit the join button below on YouTube or tyt.com/join. We'll see you there. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.